Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome to this episode of Environmental Sustainability Series. My name is Deborah, and I'll be your moderator for this session. You're all welcome. It's been a while. I know a lot of you have been following us on this journey of becoming environmental stewards, changing our behaviors to become environmentally friendly. And if you have not been on this journey with us that started some months back, you can check on our Facebook page, Center for Creative Development Strategies, and you will see all the series on this environmental sustainability. We have topics, different topics, we have different guest speakers, renowned people in the environment who are very knowledgeable, who have been impacting us from different departments, from different walks of life, about how to become environmental stewards and how to take care of our environment, especially when it comes to waste management. You're welcome once again. This program is brought to you by the Center for Creative Development Strategies and is being supported by the Embassy of France in Nigeria. We have talked about people, planet, and profit in this series. We have talked about municipal solid waste management. We have talked about becoming an environmental steward. We have talked about lifestyles to enhance your environmental waste management. We have talked about environmental ethics. And all these topics we are taken by people, doctors, lecturers, development workers, people you wouldn't want to miss their talks, miss the point. So please go to our Facebook page. I've said that before, Center for Creative Strategies, and you will get all these topics and all the information sharing. I bet you will not regret any of this. We all have said changing our lives. If you have been following us and you have not started doing anything to change your perspective, to change your behavior towards the environment, then this session is for you, because here we are today with another renowned person in development talking to us about women and the environment. So I'm sure we are ready to hear from her. So please make sure you have your notes, make sure you have your pen to sit down and take all the information that will be given to us today. No knowledge is wasted, especially when it comes to environment. We are what we make of our environment. We are what our environment is, because we cannot do without our environment. On daily basis, when we wake up, we interact with our environment. We interact on daily basis with our environment. And without being knowledgeable enough of how you should act towards your environment, of the behaviors or activities that you engage in on daily basis that can mar or protect your environment, you wouldn't be doing yourself any good. So this is why the CCDS is bringing to you this an opportunity for more about your environment, for you to be equipped with all the knowledge you need to take care of your environment, because most of all the works we do, our livelihood is from the environment, our resources is from the environment. So if we destroy our environment, we have nothing. We have nothing for us. The profit we think we even make, we will not be able to make it. We have been on this series for so long, but today we have another twist to it. Now talking about women and the environment. I'm sure most of you be wondering why women. That is why we are here today. We are here to get that information. We are here to get that knowledge. So please, I indulge every one of us that have been on this series and the one joining us for the first time today. After hearing everything we are going to be saying today, after interacting and clearing some doubts and questions, let's go home and start changing one behavior that is harming the environment, from our waste, the way we handle our waste, the way we separate them, the way we dispose, whatever it is. And after hearing, please don't just hear and keep it to yourself. Tell your neighbor, tell your friends, in your forums, in your networks, in your groups, both online and offline. Make sure you share the information you're going to be getting here today. It's going to save us, it's going to save our state, it's going to save our planet. So we welcome you once again to this session, and I know you're going to have a robust discussion. Please make sure you write down your questions, because there's going to be a question and answer session where you'll be given the opportunity to ask your questions. And I am sure we have a capable hand on ground today to answer every question you have based on women and environment. So right about now, I'll be welcoming the team lead for this program, Nancy Iheduru, to give us a welcome address and remark, and also to introduce the speaker for today. Nancy, over to you.
Thank you very much, Deborah. That was an amazing intro. Thank you very much and welcome again, all our listeners and those that have been on this program for a long time and those that are just joining us. Thank you again for being with us today. Of course, my name is Nancy Iheduru. I am the Executive Director, Center for Creative Development Strategies, and the team lead on this project. Our project is on improving the living conditions, the environmental conditions in Rivers State through waste management enterprise development. And we are targeting women and youths in 3 local governments: Obiakpo local government, Port Harcourt City local government, and Oyibo local government. We've been having a very interesting journey so far, and it's been awesome. From visits to the commissioners of environment and youth and women affairs, to the sensitization programs that we had, amazing results, and people are actually very interested in this subject. To other programs we've been doing, we've also started our radio programs. We started you can be hearing our jingles by now, and we had an amazing program, the Eco-Friendly Summit. It was really a very successful program where we saw passion in the hearts of people. People learned a lot, and people are now ready to partner with this process. All of this has been brought to you by the generous support of our funders, the Embassy of France in Nigeria. Of course, today is just another day of our webinar series. Today, we have an interesting personality coming on our webinar series. I want to introduce her, somebody I really respect a lot, a woman of value, a woman of worth, a woman that is worth, and women rights activist from Niger Delta. And she's also currently leading a thriving Nigerian eco-feminist movement. You need to listen to Omimokon. She's very passionate. She has received 2 awards in recognition of her contribution to women's emancipation in the Niger Delta, such as the Funmilayo Kuti Award for Women Emancipation in the Niger Delta, such as the Funmilayo Kuti Award for Women Emancipation by the Rivers State Branch of Civil Liberties Organization, and the prestigious Woman of the Year 2002 Award of the American Biographical Institute, ABI. She was also the State Secretary and later coordinator of the Rivers State Branch of Women in Nigeria. Wow, that's amazing. And that has been from 1999 to 2001. And she's also currently the Zonal Coordinator South-South of the Gender and Constitutional Reforms Network. She's the founder and executive director of Kebetkache Women Development and Resource Center, whose mission is to promote the rights of women and development in their leadership and develop their leadership potentials, and also to mobilize for the promotion of social justice and democratic principles. Ememokon is a woman I have come to learn from. She's one of our super mentors, and she's somebody that is worthy to listen to. I want to make welcome Ememokon. God bless you. Okay, while she's waiting to come on board, she's here. Oh, I call her boss lady. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for agreeing to be here. We are excited to hear from you. You are an icon in the Niger Delta, and not just that, not just in the Niger Delta alone, in the whole country and worldwide. Today we are discussing women and environment, and you are one person that has a lot of information on this. And this is just the beginning of this series, and today we would love to be hearing from you. Please, viewers, I want you to pick your pen and paper. is an institution on her own. So please, Okon, welcome to our webinar series. We are here. You have the floor now.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nancy. And thank you to all the people who have joined this webinar. And I'm sorry if I joined late because I was in another meeting. particularly on a panel. So I was just praying that I'll be able to round off that panel to be able to join this meeting now. And I'm happy that I'm here. I have been introduced, but I will want to do a little update on my profile. I belong to a regional network on gender and extractive, and my presentation might be a little different from what I heard Deborah say, because I'll be focusing on extractive. The Niger Delta is a peculiar area because of the oil and gas industry, and my work has been centered around the extractive sector, particularly as they affect women, and also as women respond to the challenges posed by the Niger Delta environment as a result of the oil and gas activities. I hope everybody is hearing me. Can everybody hear me? I'm using my phone and I'm not too comfortable with it, so I need to confirm that I'm being heard so I can continue. Hello? I can't hear any response. Okay. And Nancy mentioned ecofeminist. Yes, that is why I call myself ecofeminist, because my organization, Kebet is mobilizing women to be frontliners in the campaign for environmental justice, because women are more impacted by the environmental degradation experience in the Niger Delta. Okay. When we talk about the environment, we are talking about, I want to believe everybody is familiar, because this is not the first lecture in the series. So we are familiar with what environment is. We are looking at a complex situation of physical, chemical, and biotic factors such as climate, soil, and living things that act upon the organism or an ecological community. In the Niger Delta, what makes our environment peculiar, as I have said before, is the oil and gas industry, the natural resources that are being exploited in the Niger Delta region, and how these activities of exploiting the natural resources are impacting on the communities where these resources are found, and also impacting on other communities where the activities of the oil and gas industries are not found. And particularly, how are these activities impacting on women? And talking about that, I'll be looking at the impacts of the oil and gas activities on women. And why are we looking at women specifically? It is because in communities all around the world, women manage water, sources for fuel, food, and women engage in a particular way with forests and also in agriculture. We know that most of the activities of women around farming are mainly at the subsistence level. And when land is being taken for oil activities, women are displaced from that traditional occupation of farming and also of fishing. When chemicals are being disposed into water bodies and river bodies, it affects the fishing occupation of women. And why are they being affected differently from other groups? Because that is the primary source of livelihood for women. And when they are displaced from these activities, it is difficult and challenging for them to gain balance and get alternative means of livelihood to be able to take care of themselves, to be able to take care of their family, and also to be able to engage in those particular gender roles within the family and at the community level. And what are those gender roles? Is just what I have mentioned: household management of water, sources for fuel, cooking, washing, providing food, taking care of the sick. These are the basic things that women are expected to do at the family level and at the community level. And when they experience challenges in the environment through their role, it adds additional responsibility to women and makes their life more difficult than what it ordinarily should be. Now, when we talk about women in the community, what are those basic characteristics identified around livelihood, farming and fishing? I mentioned that most of them are based in rural communities. Tradition does not permit inheritance from the father or from the husband. Some of these women at the community are very poor. Sources of water are mainly streams, rivers, creeks, boreholes. Most of these are oil polluted by oil extraction process. These women have no access to electricity. Some of the girl children become victims of forced marriages, sexual abuse, and this results in high level of child motherhood, unwanted pregnancies, and the sex trade. When it comes to issues of environmental degradation in the Niger Delta, as experienced through the consequences of natural resource exploitation, we are looking at mainly pollution, and this happens through flaring of toxic gas into the atmosphere or spilling of oil into farmlands or into river bodies. And what is gas flaring? Through the process of drilling of oil, excess hydrocarbon, which cannot be recovered or recycled, are burnt and released into the atmosphere. This gas flaring involves the burning of estimated 2.5 billion cubic feet of gas on a daily basis. I might not be able to explain that. It sounds technical. This contributes affecting buildings. The rooftops are corroded and people need to change their roofings within every 6 months. And of course, we know because of the poverty level, it is difficult for people, particularly the women, to be able to be repairing their houses because they are affected by gas flaring. Gas flaring is one of the major problems associated with crude oil production. Gas flaring emissions contribute significantly to global warming, which also gives rise to climate change. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the issue of climate change. Climate change is a global issue, and climate change is the cause of most of the consequences of pollution that we are experiencing in the Niger Delta region. Gas flares are composed of toxic gases such as sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, benzaprine, and hydrogen sulfide. I'm just mentioning a few because some others, the pronunciation are somehow. These gases are released into the atmosphere in large quantities through the process of oil processing, and they have negative effect on the environment and the health and safety of communities, women and children in particular. The first consequence when it comes to gas flaring, when it comes to oil activities, is land grabs. And as I mentioned earlier, women actually do not have free access to land. Where they farm are lands that they get either from the husbands or from the father, and they don't hold the land titles unless they buy. And you can also imagine the categories of women who can buy their own land for farming. So the flat sites are acquired by companies through government, and this reduces available land for agriculture for women in the communities. And when companies take land for their oil facilities or their oil activities, negotiations around compensation are not discussed with the women who are farming on those lands. They are discussed with the men who hold the land titles. So we understand the implication. That is outright displacement from somebody's source of livelihood. And because discussion is not held with the woman, they cannot even suggest alternative. Even if there is implication that there is alternative, it is being discussed with the men who are the heads of the household. And in a situation where somebody is negotiating something, not on your behalf, definitely the interest of the woman is not reflected or highlighted in that discussion. Gas flaring releases greenhouse gases directly into the atmosphere, and this traps heat in the atmosphere. I've already mentioned that this process contributes to global warming that gives rise to climate change. Another effect is that gas flaring causes acid rain. You will agree with me that there were times, possibly the youth of these days might not even understand that there were times we used to bathe under the rain when it rains as we were growing up. It was fun and exciting, bathing under the rain. I remember those days in primary school, if we are coming back from school and it is raining, instead of us trying to take shelter somewhere, we would prefer to walk under the rain because it's exciting. We feel good when the rain is dropping on us. But that cannot be tried these days because the rainwater is poisonous. And it is poisonous because of gas flaring. And that also means that rainwater is unsafe for drinking. Those days, our mothers used to harvest rainwater. And actually, rainwater used to have a kind of peculiar taste that used to make people want to drink from rainwater. But we cannot try that these days. If you collect rainwater in a white basin, you will notice the black particles in the water. That makes the water unsafe for drinking. It's poisonous. And when this rain, this acid rain, is falling on the roofing of buildings, it causes corrosion. And after some time, you realize that the roof begins to leak. Even when the rainwater falls on the walls of buildings, it also affects the paint and the buildings, which means that every now and then, if people have to maintain their buildings, they have to take note of all this and ensure that regular repairs are made if your building will have to be in good shape. And the effect on water, and considering when I said earlier, the gender roles of women in providing household water, this creates a lot of challenge for the women and adds to the burden of providing water for your household, providing water for the family. And that means there is no access to clean water. So if we look at the impact of oil being spilled into river bodies, and we look at the impact of gas flaring, poisoning rainwater, and we also consider the fact that government is not providing access to potable water. Now everybody depends on borehole, and it is not everybody that have the means and the resources to ensure that where he lives or where she lives, that there is borehole. This creates additional burden. So this makes access to clean water an issue within the society, and it impacts more on women because of their gender roles of providing water for the family. And if we also look at some of the livelihood activities of women, it requires regular provision of water, like women who are food vendors, women who run restaurants, women who do hairdressing, and all that. You begin to consider and appreciate the challenges that they go through because there is no access to clean drinking water. There is no access to clean water because apart from drinking, water serves several purposes and is significant to our daily existence. According to the United Nations Environment Program, life expectancy in the Niger Delta averages around 40 years. That is too low. It means the implication is that everybody is vulnerable from the age 40. Anything can happen to anybody. And why is this so? It is due to the exposure to air and water pollution through the oil and gas extraction and the emission of toxic gases into the atmosphere. This causes health challenges such as cancer and lung diseases. Let me also mention something around how women relate with gas flaring. There is a community in Delta State, Iwerekam, and they have a gas flare site right in the middle of the community. And if we are familiar with Koko Gari, there is that delicacy that is called Koko Gari. They have to dry the cassava with the sun. But the women prefer the heat from the gas flare because it dries the cassava easily. But what they don't understand is that the particles from the flare makes their cocoa gari unhealthy for consumption. So that even when companies try to stop the women from drying their cocoa gari by the flare site, the women were angry. And why is that? One, because they are trying to make ends meet. Two, because of the poverty level at the community women, the high rate of poverty among women. Three, because these women have been displaced from their traditional means of livelihood. So they try to do anything to ensure that they raise family income to be able to take care of their family and for themselves. And they sell this cocoa gari on the road. People who travel will stop and buy, and they don't realize that they are buying poison because this has become highly polluted. Gas flaring affects the central nervous system and leads to emotional stability. At times, we may not understand. And there have been a great deal of anger and bitterness in the Niger Delta. Why? Because there is that inequality in the distribution of the revenue that comes from the natural resources. And though this anger and this bitterness and this discontentment is because we feel we are not benefiting from the resources that is gotten from our community. On the other hand, part of the stress is also because we have been affected by pollution over the past decades. So a lot of people who do not have that emotional stability tend to behave to the negative, which has also provided reasons and excuses for corporations and for government to blame communities for what is happening around the communities and what is happening to people in the Niger Delta region. Gas flaring causes daytime tiredness, which has implications for women considering their gender roles of being responsible for household chores. I wish I will be able to share pictures of gas flare sites in communities, but I can't do that now. I'll just talk through. And I'm also assuming that some of you must have been familiar with gas flaring, even if you might not be familiar with some of the consequences of gas flaring. Gas flaring is responsible for bronchitis in adults. It causes asthma. It causes blood vision in children. It affects agriculture. The plants are not yielding as they used to yield. The plants become stunted. In short, it has contributed to food insecurity because food is no longer as available as they used to be. Gas flaring, as I said earlier, contributes to climate change. And most of the flooding incidents that we are experiencing these days are consequences of climate change. We are having heavy rains all through the year. It is difficult these days to really know when dry season stops and when rainy season starts. Those days we used to have the Harmattan season. I don't know how many of the youth these days will understand when we talk about Harmattan. When I was growing up, from November to February, that used to be the Harmattan season. In short, you won't even be able to walk about without wearing warm clothes. And I remember on 31st December, when we are doing crossover night, there used to be that sound of Harmattan wind. Then as a child, I would reason in my mind as if the old year is being blown to somewhere. If I remember it now, I'll just laugh at myself. But you know, those are the experiences, peculiar experiences I can remember with the seasons then. But that has changed. For many years now, I have not experienced Harmattan. We don't even know the difference. We have heavy rainfall even in December period. We have heavy rainfall during Christmas. We have heavy rainfall in January. So we don't really know the difference. And that is climate change for you. And in women, a lot of women in the Niger Delta experience early menopause. You have women in their late 80s, they don't menstruate anymore, and they could think they have a serious health challenge. They don't know that it is the impacts from the environment, the impact of pollution that is causing the early menopause. We have high rates of miscarriages among women. We have fertility issues. People don't link it to the pollution in the environment, and it affects women. And if we really appreciate the challenges that women have within the family and the community, when you have fertility issues, when you are finding it difficult to be pregnant and sustain the pregnancy, when you don't have a child in a family, if we appreciate what a woman goes through, then we will know that there is need to actually do something about the pollution in the Niger Delta region. Gas flaring caused a lot of health with muscle indigestion, skin diseases, and several other health implications. And when we look at all these consequences from the pollution in the environment, and we also look at the women's rights issues in our society, then we begin to appreciate when somebody talks about women and environment. Let us look at the unequal power relations between women and men that excludes women from decision-making processes. All these things I'm explaining at the community level, even at the state level, it is difficult to find women in key decision-making bodies. So when there are discussions around issues of engagement with companies, around consultations, around negotiations of community interests, women are not there to be able to negotiate their own interests, to be able to explain how they are being impacted by destructive activities. They are not there to say, this is what we want. These are the kind of solutions that we want. There is nowhere women issues, or there is nowhere negotiations can be made without women that will really adequately address the interests of women. So this gives rise to the campaign for women inclusion in natural resource management. Let's also look at the harmful traditional practices against widows. I had mentioned the fact that women don't have access to land. So the land where they farm is either from the husbands or from the father. And let us look at practices against widows. When a man dies, what happens to the wife? What happens to the widow? The land she was farming on will be taken away from her by the family because, of course, she cannot lay any claim to the land. And because she cannot inherit, it is also difficult. In a situation where she did not have children, she doesn't even have the power to argue. In a situation where she has only female children and no sons, it is difficult. It is even taken as if the issue should not be raised at all. Though through civil society activities of campaigning for women's rights, there are laws and legislations in Rivers State and some other states that is prohibiting the harmful traditional practices against women. But the law cannot be enforced on its own if somebody does not pick up the law and use it as a tool to engage in favor of affected women. So there is need to incorporate all this when we are discussing the environment. Sexual violence. In all the whole narrative about the oil and gas industries, earlier I mentioned issues of sexual abuse of girl children. It happens all around where we have the company workers who leave their families for a long time because they have to work at the oil facilities. They now have to use to coerce community women and girls into satisfying them sexually. This is violence. In some cases, this can be argued that some of those things happen with the consent of the women. But let us look at a situation where a woman is under a very serious case of poverty. Not that I am justifying sex trade, but when somebody is in a position where government programs and measures and legislation or laws do not provide for the interests of those people, then they are vulnerable. They are vulnerable to all kinds of indignities and abuses within the community. This is what has happened to a lot of girls and women in Niger Delta communities because the situation where they find themselves in has made them vulnerable to sexual abuse and sexual violence. Apart from the oil workers, the Niger Delta communities has become highly militarized, mainly because of the oil and gas activities that over the years gave rise to militancy and other forms of conflict, and that's a misunderstanding and conflict between corporations and communities. This has made governments and even the companies to post security personnel to communities to maintain peace and create enabling environment for the oil and gas business to continue. And in many cases, the activities of these security people impact negatively on women. There is high incidence of rape, there is high incidence of sexual abuse, there is high incidence of violence. All these are related to the activities that are going on in our environment. Then the issue of lack of access to credit facilities. I have mentioned the different economic activities that women engage in, and it is difficult for them to move from the subsistence level where they are carrying out these economic activities to another level. And when they are displaced from their traditional means of earning income, it is also difficult to raise capital to find alternative means of earning income. And women don't have access to credit facilities. Even when poverty reduction programs are designed, who are the people who have access to gain and benefit from such programs? There is need when we are discussing the environment and campaigning for a sustainable environment. There is need to consider the implications for men, implications for women, and ensure that we adopt strategies and define our campaigns to address the interests of women. I am going to round up by briefly mentioning some of the things that we have done. When Nancy was introducing me, she had mentioned that my organization is building ecofeminist movement in the Niger Delta region. In 2016, we established the Niger Delta Women's Day of Action for Environmental Justice. We adopted December 17th to mobilize women at the community level and other environmental justice campaigners to join the women in solidarity to campaign for environmental justice and call on government and other stakeholders to address women issues in the environment from the perspective of women's rights. That is what ecofeminism is all about. Ecofeminism looks at how is society treating women and how is the society treating the ecology, because we feel that the oppression of the environment, the degradation, conscious degradation of the environment by the capitalists and the oil and gas corporation also impacts directly or indirectly on women, and it contributes to the indignities, the injustice that women suffer in our community. Thank you very much.
Very much. Before I hand over to Deborah to take some of the questions that are already popping up, I want to thank you so much, for this very important, lecture that you are giving to us. But I have a question. You know, you talked about the ecofeminist movement, and all that you've been talking about has been on the extractives. And I know that the women on their own, they have little, they don't have much to do about the extractives except to run advocacy and maybe to impress on government and the extractive industries to do something. Now, recently on this our project, we are actually dealing seriously with the solid waste management angle. And then now my question to you is, the ecofeminist movement, does it not cover other aspects of waste management? For instance, we are campaigning for environmental stewardship, and we set up a eco-friendly network, asking men, women, boys and girls, everybody to become environmentally committed to their environment. Now, when you look at the area of solid waste management, women have a lot to play. They have a lot on their hands. They have a lot of responsibility. There are things that they're doing on their own that is harming them. You know, there are activities that are taking. They're not separating their waste. They're not educating others. They're not committed on their own. So my question is, this eco-feminist movement, how does it include every other aspect of waste management, every other aspect of waste issues as it affects women as well? And as a professional, I would like you to highlight, if possible, areas that waste management, solid waste management, what women can do, how it also affects women under this. So the waste that we generate on our own, the plastics we throw out, the composite that we bring out, the waste that we generate on our own. Because I believe before you can make a serious demand on others, there should be a little change in your own behavior on how you attend to your own environment. I hope this question is well understood, Madam MM. Please, can you kindly throw a little light on that, and then tell us how the ecofeminist movement connects to solid waste issues as well. Hello, Madam, are you still there?
Yes, I'm there. I can hear you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I can hear you.
Okay, please. Yes.
Thank you very much for that question.
I finished the question.
Yes, I know you finished. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Wow.
Yes. But I can hear you. Okay. There is actually a linkage, because all this happen within the environment where everybody lives and where the woman lives. Our only point of departure is that I am placing the responsibility on the state to create those structures and the enabling environment that will make the woman perform her role better in the environment. Women definitely promote conservation, environmental conservation and all that. And even the solid waste management, it still links back to the activities of the big corporations. If we look at the plastics, who is producing the plastics? And how are the plastics being recycled? The people who are in big business should have a way of recycling the plastics, or the government should come up with policies where this waste can be better managed, rather than everywhere being disorganized, everywhere being disorganized and things that are not done properly. And then we are pushing back the responsibility to the people who are already disempowered as a result of the other issues of pollution within the society. There is no disconnect between the two. I believe everybody that is campaigning for the health of the environment is part of the environmental justice movement. And when we talk about the ecofeminists, it is reinforcing the role of the women in the environment, the role of the women in promoting a healthy environment and sustaining the healthy environment. But where is the linkage between the injustice? We need to identify and recognize the injustice in the system that is adding additional burden on community members, particularly the women, to begin to figure out how the solid waste can be managed. One thing leads to the other. Because the system is faulty, it adds additional pressure on community members and on women. So the system needs to live up to its own responsibilities. And why everything is being linked to the oil and gas industry, we need to understand and appreciate the way the oil and gas industry has affected the daily lives of people in the Niger Delta region. So there is definitely that linkage. There is definitely injustice on the people, particularly the women. The environmental justice movement is one and the same. The difference is that people decide to focus on different aspects of the environment and different roles that people can play, but everything is tied into one. And there is also one big activity or powerful stakeholders that are creating challenges within the system that is making it difficult for ordinary community members to be able to do things that they already know how to do. In those days in the communities, were we not keeping our environment clean? We were keeping our environment clean. Why is it that in urban centers, where we have civilization and development, supposed development, this is where we are having all the challenges of being able to dispose of our waste? I don't know whether you understand what I mean. Because waste disposal are things that are easily done by community members in the villages. How are people disposing of their waste? But when it comes to development, most of the projects that are brought into our society are development projects. But the developers and the government don't really sit down to find out the implications on the environment, on the way we live our lives, how this development project will impact on us. Yes, if we need a good road is good for everybody. The oil and gas project is good for everybody. But then it is also part of government requirement that there is need for environmental impact assessment and the implications of the big projects on community members and on human beings. So why should development turn around and disorganize people's life? When people's lives are being disorganized in the process, community members will not appreciate the positive impacts of development. I don't know whether I have answered your question.
Yeah. Yes, you have. You have sufficiently answered that question, and it's very, very interesting. I can see the connection between the two. Actually, the issue of environmental justice is not only on the extractive but also on solid waste. Like the companies that produce all these plastics, we need to start engaging them. We need to start finding out what the government is actually doing about what the impact of their business on the women, especially because right now we're talking about women and environment. Thank you. I'm going to hand over to Deborah. There are a lot of questions that popped up. I hope you still have some time to answer them. Deborah, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Madam MM. It's good to see you again after a very long while. And thank you for sharing this robust knowledge with us today. Some of the questions, I'll read some of them. And I think I actually asked this question. From your presentation, it looks as if the women in the rural areas are more affected by environmental degradation than the ones in urban area. Please, can you just throw more light on this? Because most of the examples and the narratives you gave were people in the rural area, their livelihood, the inheritance system, and then what about the women in the urban areas? How are this environmental degradation affecting the ones in the urban areas? Or is it that the rural area, the women in the rural area are more affected? Like it's been proven that they are more affected than the ones in the urban areas. Hello, ma.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, ma. You heard the question?
Yes, I heard.
Okay,
I heard you clearly.
Okay.
Now, all of us belong to communities. All of us belong
Okay.
to communities, and even the urban centers were once communities. And the issue is this: people in rural communities are more disadvantaged. In the urban centers, one way or the other, we have a way of reducing the impact and the pressures that comes as a result of flares, gas flares, and spillages. And in those days in Port Harcourt, there used to be gas flare points inside Port Harcourt. I remember there used to be gas flare points somewhere at Rumola. Possibly that point is no longer there, right in the heart of the town. There is that location road, the road opposite Ebony Junction. Down there, inside, there used to be a flow, there used to be a gas flare point. But as a result of campaigns, most of those points within the town has been put off. But rural communities still suffer the impact because the flare points at the local government level, at the community level, are still being flared. And that is why campaigns have to be intensified so that there will be an end to gas flaring. The issue is that not that they cannot put it off, but they don't want to invest more money to do what they are supposed to do, like reinjecting the gas into the soil. Now, if we also look at access to water, in the urban centers, there are several, maybe where we rent houses, people build houses and they sunk borehole. Yes, the rent will be high. But in rural communities, it is much more difficult. There are some communities where they don't have access to water, so people still go back to the polluted water to use and cook food, to use and wash, to use and bathe, to use and do every other thing that they have to do. So that is the difference. And another thing is that it makes us to appreciate the inequality that exists in the society. That inequality is there. So you have on the other divide, people who don't have access to any form of social amenity. The schools that you have in the urban centers are different from the schools you have in rural communities. And if you begin to imagine a situation where children who school in community schools and the children in urban centers who school in private schools, because in the urban center, of course, everybody knows that public schools do not provide quality education. So every family struggles to send their children to private schools because they can have that access to quality education, at least to a certain level, for those who can afford it. But in rural communities, what are the alternatives? They are stuck with public schools. And government don't remember those schools in rural communities. As a development person, I work in communities. I have seen the situation of primary schools in rural communities. And then we expect these children to grow up and compare favorably with children who school in private schools. You can imagine what I mean. So when we talk, it is better to flag the issues and share the experiences of rural communities. If action is being taken to address this issue in rural communities, definitely something will be done for the urban centers. So government programs should be designed with the interests of community members at heart and not just designed to promote the urban centers, particularly the state capitals. If government puts all their available resources or focus their interest at the state capitals, people who visit the state capitals will assume that every other person within the state is fine, but that is not the case. As community mobilizers and community activists, it is always good when we have the opportunity to flag the challenges experienced in rural communities, and when we also have the opportunity, it is good to create that platform for them to speak for themselves. Hello? Hello?
Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you so very much, ma'am. Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much. You have really been insightful. This session has been insightful. We've learned a lot. We have taken down enough. And amongst the things we took down, it means we have to intensify our advocacy and our awareness creation, because really the gap is still there. And the only way we can bridge that gap is to bring more people like yourself into the fold, to continue to join hands and continue the advocacy and working with government to enact policies that put in place environmental management policies that will help reduce the effects of this environmental degradation. So we are so grateful to have you, ma. And for those that are just joining us now, you can also watch this session live after now on YouTube, on our channel CCDS Media on YouTube. You can watch this series and get a lot of knowledge from it. Also on our Facebook, it is still there recorded. You can go back to it and read through it. So this is also a charge that we cannot end this advocacy here now. We have to still keep talking until it gets to the ears of those making the policies, and let them make policies. You also talked about factoring in environmental implications when a development project is being planned. You talked about when people are building, when the government is building road, it's a big project. Yes, it's a welcome project. Yes, it's a welcome development. But environmental implications of those projects should be factored in during the planning. There should be an environmental impact assessment so that not when a project is being done, people don't appreciate it, because probably the effect of those those developments are bringing about a negative effect on the environment, which is in turn affecting people's livelihoods and their health. Okay, like a road project causing flood in someone's house. The person might not end up appreciating that road. It's a good project, but because it's having a negative effect on the environment, people might not appreciate it 100%. So we'll have to keep talking. It means our advocacy is not ending anytime soon. We'll keep talking and keep sensitizing and keep meeting people. Thank you so much, thank you very much, Ma. If you're still there, thank you. I'm sure we have more questions, and when the questions come, we'll have to maybe communicate to you if are the ones we cannot handle. Communicate to you on your private. Yes, Ma. And I'm sure you'll be able to handle it. Thank you so much, and have a blessed evening. For us here at CCDS and the people watching, it means our advocacy is not ending anytime soon. We still have to keep engaging the government and the agencies and the departments to make do with the resources. And as they are making their plans in development, they should factor in the environmental implications so as not to destroy people's livelihoods and not to destroy the health of the residents of the state. As we have heard this evening, Niger Delta is a peculiar environment because we have oil and gas, and because we are living in a terrain that is prone to a lot of hazards if we don't manage our environment properly. So this is a call to everyone, every resident, to talk where you can talk. Anytime you have the opportunity, anytime you have the time to talk, please talk. Our environment is very precious to us, and our livelihood most of the time, even the oil and gas, is from the environment. So if we destroy the environment, if we don't sustain it, then we have a problem, both for ourselves and the generation yet unborn. Thank you so very much, and have a blessed day. I've talked about our social media handle. You can follow us on Facebook, Center for Creative Development Strategies. You can also watch us, CCDS Media, on YouTube. And on Twitter, we are also the Eco-Friendly Network 1. And Instagram, we are also the Eco-Friendly Net 1. Please make sure you follow us. Thank you for watching and listening. Nancy?
Wow, that was amazing. Thank you so much, MM. That was really amazing. I learned a lot, and there's been a serious call on women everywhere to sit up. So we have to really sit up and join forces together. Join ourselves with the resources, our time, and let's make sure that we bring the issue of environmental